Morning guys, welcome to the Knitting Expat. This is episode 5 I believe, and today is Monday, April 13th, and I'd like to welcome everyone. To start with, I just want to say thank you for all the new subscribers and stuff on YouTube and on the Ravelry group and on Instagram. It's been great seeing all you guys commenting and chatting, and I really felt like I've made a lot of new connections this week, which is really fun. And so yeah, I just want to thank all the new viewers. Thank you for taking the time to check me out and give me a go. And for all of you returning viewers, thanks for coming back, because it's yeah, I'm still surprised that I'm even doing this, but I've really enjoyed it. And so yeah, here we go. Another week. Okay, start off where you can find me. You can find me on Instagram as Mina Phillip. You can find me on Ravelry as Mina86. There's a Ravelry group now, which is the Knitting Expat Podcast, or just Knitting Expat Podcast. If you just search in the group section on Ravelry, you find us. And so just come along, join the conversation. You can start your own threads or whatever, just get involved. It's nice to get to chat to people who watch the episodes. And you can find the show notes at the Knitting Expat blog, which is knittingexpat.wordpress.com. And I'll have basically anything that I show or anything I talk about, I'll have it linked in the show notes. So I've had to put the AC on today, so I really hope the noise isn't too, I hope you don't hear it. I did a little test just before I started filming and I couldn't hear it, but if you do, I'm sorry. It's getting quite hot, and I'll get to that later. So just want to say a few thank yous as well. There's Nina from Fuzzy Love Knots, who gave me a very lovely shout out yesterday when I watched her blog yesterday. Sorry, her podcast yesterday, and that was really sweet. She said she has some really lovely things to say and about the podcast and stuff, so that was very, very sweet of her. And she also showed some of her old knitting patterns and stuff that she'd accumulated, and so that was really fun to see. Some really old, like, Spanish and Chilean knitting patterns. This is Hugo. Hoping he'll stay here for a little bit. And that was really sweet. And she was saying how she had some issues, how she found it strange to say Mina rather than Nina. And like growing up, people used to think that she was saying Mina instead of Nina. Now I've always had the opposite problem when I've been telling people my name, telling them I'm called Mina. A lot of the time people would think I was saying Nina. So it's quite funny to find that she had the opposite problem to me. And but yeah, so I guess that's that. And also I wanted to give a shout out to Hannah from the Rose Hip Knits podcast. She's actually a Swedish lady who has lived in Tasmania in Australia for the last 10 years or so, and she's recently started a podcast as well, and showing off the stuff that she made. She's made a lot of like cute little kids things for her little girls and stuff, so it's quite nice to see. And yeah, so last week the podcast went up a day late because I was having YouTube problems. I'm not entirely sure what happened. My internet speed went really slow for some reason. We couldn't quite figure that one out, and then once it had actually uploaded, YouTube was taking forever to process it. And I think the Bakery Bears had the same issue last week when they were trying to upload their episodes. So hopefully it won't take so long this time. And yeah, so a few people actually have asked to see the boys on the podcast recently. My friend Josie and most recently Melody from the Mandarins podcast messaged me asking to see the boys. So this is Hugo. I went for a different tactic this morning. I haven't fed them yet, so they're more likely to want to hang around and get fed, basically. So this is Hugo. He's a Scottish Fold cat. He's actually grey, slightly stripy. You can see he's got a lighter undercoat. But this is my little fluff nugget. yeah, he can be a little menace. This one is more of the mischief maker. But thankfully, both my boys are pretty good around yarn. They get curious and they want to smell things, but they're not likely to destroy anything. Are you going to sit down or are you going to go? Alright, and I'll see if I can get Derek to come in. He's a little bit more wary of things. And now I'm covered in cat fluff. Okay, sorry about that. I just went to find Derek, and I think he's disappeared off upstairs somewhere, so I'm not going to go drag him out. He'll come out later if he wants to. Okay, well, Hugo's run off with the cat toy. Right, so where was I? Yeah, so I was saying the cats, they're pretty good actually with my knitting. They're not that bothered by it. Sorry if you can hear that, it's Hugo meowing in the background. They aren't that bothered by my knitting, they're not that bothered by yarn. I can leave my stuff out and I can pretty much be sure that they're not going to go after it. Occasionally if there's like a yarn tail hanging off or something, they'll want to go after that, but really they just tend to leave my stuff alone, which is lovely. I can even leave stuff out blocking on my blocking mats on the floor. Leave the room, go away knowing they're not going to bother with it, they're not going to touch it or try to sit on it. I mean, they used to when they were a bit younger, when I first started knitting. They used to start, you know, especially Hugo, he was always really interested in sniffing stuff out and sitting on my knitting, but they were never destroyers of knitting, which is great. That's always good, I guess. Can you hear that? Yeah. Hugo! I don't know what's up with him this morning, I'm so sorry. Okay, sorry. Alright, well let's get on to knitted things. That's what you're all here for. Let's start with FOs. And I'm wearing my first FO, my Stripes Gone Crazy cardigan. And yes, so I finished this actually the day I filmed the podcast last week. This got finished whilst I was trying to upload and failing that day. So all I had left to do, I'd finished the sleeves, and all I had left to do was to pick up the collar and do the button band. And I even sewed on the buttons, which is, see there, they're nothing fancy, they're just normal little buttons. I used, I wasn't sure what to use to sew them on with, and in the end I sewed them on with some invisible thread that I'd got from, I'd ordered some online a while ago. And so yeah, that worked pretty well. At least I don't have to worry about the ends being hidden. You can't really see them anyway because it's invisible. But yeah, and I love it. I love how it's turned out. The sleeves are nice and long. I've always had an issue growing up with finding stuff because I've always been tall. I've pretty much been full height since I was about 14. So finding clothes that fit were always a problem. I remember as a teenager, a lot of my trousers and jeans and stuff that I bought, my mum would help me to tailor them, and that would mean basically cutting them off at the knee and adding 3 inches of fabric to lengthen the trousers because they were too short. They were always too short for me. The Topshop tall range would usually be about right, but Topshop was always a little bit more expensive, but I'd used to pick up stuff in the sales if there was anything around and stuff, but more often than not I'd have to cut off my trousers at the knees and add fabric, or at the bottom add fabric to make them longer. Yeah. And I had the same issue with sleeves because long legs, long arms. And so yeah, so now that I'm knitting my own clothes, my one thing is whenever I'm knitting sweaters or jumpers or cardigans, if I'm knitting them for myself, I will always make super long sleeves because I never got to have long sleeves as a kid. As a kid, my sleeves would always stop around like here, which is a really annoying length because it just, as soon as you put your arms on, they start riding up again, and Anyway, it just always annoyed me that I couldn't find sleeves that were long enough. So whenever I found something that had long enough sleeves, I was like, right, I want that. So now I'm making my own long sleeves. There's a lot of talk about sleeves. I'll take this off and show you the back properly now that it's all been blocked. You see the stripes have gone crazy at the back. They're going off sideways. So yeah, this is done with short row shaping. And yeah, it was really easy actually. Very easy to do. I love how it turned out. It's so soft and it blocked beautifully. The stitches totally evened out and it was so nice. And let me see, where did I put this in here? So the pattern is the Stripes Gone Crazy pattern, and it's by Atelier Alpha on Ravelry. That's the pattern. She didn't pick the best colours for the sample cardigan because it's really hard to see in the photos. Like even in print, it's hard to see the stripes properly. And I knit that with Dubai Knits Faith, Hope and Love yarn in the Wisteria's colourway, Smoky Orchid and Bridesmaid. These were the three I originally got. And then I added some drops Baby Alpaca Silk in this grey. And the Dubai Knits yarn is 50% merino, 50% silk. So it goes well with the alpaca silk blend. And after blocking, you can barely tell the difference. The alpaca is definitely still is a bit more hairy, so has a bit more of a halo to it, but it's really not that obvious at all. And I think the most satisfying thing about finishing this project was getting to cut off all the tails. Now I read somewhere, or I heard somewhere, I can't remember who mentioned this, but someone said you should keep all your yarn tails rather than throwing them away. You keep them all, and then if you're making, especially if you make little stuffed toys, you can use them for stuffing. Because why not? Why throw it away? It makes perfectly good stuffing. So I think I'm going to start doing that, especially since I have a lot of tails now. And so that's that, and I think that'll be the last time I have to show you that. This has been possibly the longest it's ever taken me to finish a garment, a cardigan or a top or anything. I started it on the, let me just check my notes. I started it on the 1st of March and finished on the 6th of April. And there was at least a week in there where I didn't touch it. Yeah, I don't like letting things sit. I really don't. It makes me feel guilty. I'm like, it's on my needles, I need to knit it. It's on my needles for a reason, because I want to knit it. And leaving it is not really, it makes me feel guilty. I'm not going to put this back on because it is quite warm in here. Alright, and that's it for finished objects. I just had the one. But that was the only thing on my needles last week, which means all my whips are brand new. I've got all my works in progress are brand new projects that you haven't seen. So I'll start with the one I told you last week I was going to start, which are my socks, my Neon April socks. And they're in my little Sock Monkey sock bag, 2 at a time sock bag, made by my friend Mel in Dubai. And yeah, it's got the little divider in the middle, which is perfect, keeping the balls of yarn separate. So this is being knit in this beautiful purple with pops of pink and yellow. And this is by Everything Old. I believe she's a Canadian dyer, from what I've been able to find online. And this is her signature sock, 80% merino, 20% wool, sorry, 20% nylon. It's 400 yards. But I don't think she's selling online anymore. I don't think she's dyeing, but this was a gift from my friend Josie, who also dyes the Dubai Knits yarn. And as you can see, I've got 2 feet, and I did the heels last night, so they're all turned. The fish lips kiss heel, which I really loved on the Melisandre socks that I did, so I did them again for this. As you can see, I'm not sure what happened because it's the same needles as I did with the Melisandre. Maybe my gauge is loosened a little bit, but I've only done 60 stitches this time, whereas on the Melisandre on the foot I went up to 68, which I realised was too much. When I got around the ankle it got a bit baggy, but I thought 64 would be fine, but even 64 on this one was coming up really loose around the foot, so you can actually see here, because frankly by the time I noticed I didn't really want to rip back and start again. You can see there's a little bit of bulge here where I decreased it back out on my way. And these socks are just for me, and as you can see, once they're on the actual foot you won't even notice the slight bagginess here. It's fine, doesn't bother me at all. I'm thinking of making these shorter socks. These aren't going to be full length on the legs, or basically they won't be that long on the legs. I don't think. I'll probably only do maybe an inch on the leg and then do another inch or two of a rib cuff. So that won't take long to finish. And those are my neon April socks for the Caffeinated Knitting Neon April Cal. I think there's a few other podcasters who are doing sock knit-alongs at the moment. I know the Bakery Bears are doing the Spring into Socks Cal, and I think it's Knix Knits is also doing their same, and I think there are a few others as well, so I might see if I can enter them into other ones. We'll see. The second one on my list that I'm working on is I started the Persistence is Key cardigan that I spoke to you guys about. So I said after I finished this cardigan I wanted to cast on either the Marco Polo or the Persistence is Key, and so I cast on the Persistence is Key. And that is, here's a picture. It's this cardigan with the cables up the back. I don't know how well you can see that. But it's coming out really nice. It's not one that you can just do in front of the TV. It definitely requires concentration because there is cabling or like crossover stitches on right and wrong side rows. So this is where I've got to. I've done the rib collar, which has a bit of short row shaping in it. Not much, but a little bit. And then this is the start of the back and the shoulders, and I'm currently on I've done the sleeve cap shaping because this is done with the contiguous sleeve method. And so I've done that, and I'm just doing the increases for the sleeves at the moment. And this is the central back panel. So if I can show this. There you go, with the cabling. And I don't know if you can tell, but I did the first cable row 3 times. I did it, it was wrong, I tinked back, did it again, it was still wrong, tinked back, did it again. By the 3rd time I was like, clearly this cable does not want to go another way, and I for some reason cannot figure it out, and I don't know why. So the first cable here, you can see that first twist is going the wrong way, it should be going the other way. It's going that way. And I had the same issue on the front cable. It was only on that first row, and I don't know why. For some reason, that first row just wasn't working for me. And you know what? Doesn't matter. It was, I think it was people. There are some people that I know who knit, and they are very adamant that there should be no mistakes in their knitting, and they will always rip back, and they will always fix mistakes no matter what. And I'm like, well, really, I don't mind. I don't mind a couple of small mistakes in my knitting. I think it kind of adds a bit of, it's a handmade item at the end of the day. It's not machine made. It's not made by robots, it's made by humans. So mistakes are only natural. Humans make mistakes. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it makes it any less of a, how do I put it? It doesn't make it any less of like a nice item. It doesn't make it any less special just because it's got a small mistake in it. And the small mistakes are, I think, are what adds charm and character to the item. It shows that it's been made by hand, and I think that's not a bad thing. As I think it was Melody who mentioned it in one of her recent episodes of Melody of the Mandarins podcast. She mentioned it in one of her recent episodes that it's like collecting physical memories, and I really like that, because whenever you see that slight difference or slight mistake or whatever, it reminds you of when you were knitting it, and I like that. I like that idea of the physical memories. I think that's a very poetic way of putting it, but it's true, and I like it. So that's why those things don't really bother me that much. I do try and fix them if I find them at the time, but if I find it 3-4 rows later, I just don't bother. I don't bother ripping back half the time. Like I said, unless it's really a glaring error that needs to be fixed. So this is a pattern by, I'm trying to find the name, Amanda Woger on Ravelry. It's a paid for pattern, but it's well written, it's easy to understand. It's both charted and written out for the back panel, so if you're not fond of charts, you can easily use the written out version of the panel. Version of the chart for the back panel. Next up, I have a test knit that I'm doing. This is the first test knit I've ever done, and I'm doing this is for Maria of the Stitched in Sweden podcast. So I've been chatting back and forth with her a little bit this last week, and she's recently finished a shawl pattern that she's designed, and I offered to test knit for her. So I'm knitting it out of the main body of the shawl is being knit out of this red. This is Drops Baby Alpaca Silk. Which is 70% alpaca, 30% silk, and it's got an applied edging, which I've never done before, so I'm quite excited to try that out. I've been wanting to try that out for a while, and so I'm doing that in this. This is 100% alpaca. I use this to knit the angel shawl, the white sort of hexagonal shawl with the nups that I showed in my first episode. This was part of a gift from my sister-in-law at Christmas, and she gifted me 3 balls of this. It's just so soft. And yeah, a friend of hers has an alpaca farm in the south of England, just south of London. And so yeah, they sell the yarn from the alpacas, and the yarn is named after the alpaca that produced it, or produced the fibre for the yarn. And I think this one was called Emily. This is and all their yarns, all their alpaca yarns are natural. They're not dyed, they're undyed. So they're all the colour or whatever the alpaca was. So this is the only fingering weight one they do, is the Emily. And this is how far I've got. Oh, sorry, that's the back, that's the front. Ignore the safety pin, that's just marking the front and back. So garter stitch shawl. So, and the lace is all garter stitch as well, as is the applied edging. So if you are anti-purling, this is a perfect shawl, because it is effectively a no purl shawl. So I've done a couple of the repeats, and I've got a couple more repeats to go on the lace and then onto the border. So that's fun, and quite a fun knit, and I'm still on the first end of the first ball of the alpaca. And that is a deadline for the end of the month. Well, I think her deadline is actually like 1st of May or something. I need to double check, but I'm traveling on the 29th of April anyway, so my personal deadline is the end of the month, because I don't want to have to take this with me. Not that I mind, I just don't want to risk not finishing it in time. That's it for what's on my needles at the moment. Those are the 3 projects I have at the moment. And going back to what I think I've mentioned this before, and going back to Melody of the Mandarins, she also mentioned this, is that she doesn't like to have more than 3 projects on the go at a time. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in my first episode, but up until February this year, I was pretty much a monogamous knitter. I knit one thing until it was finished, and then I started something else, and I was very disciplined like that. Because I didn't like the idea of having something just sitting languishing on my needles. It kind of didn't sit right with me, and it's not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but it didn't suit my personality. It's not, I couldn't do that. So when I started knitting more polygamously, I started knitting more than one thing at a time. At one point, I ended up having 6 things on my needles, and I was just sat there and I was just like, I can't do this, it's just too much stuff. Because whatever I knit on, I kept feeling like, okay, well, now I need to knit on the other thing so nothing gets left behind, and that way I was like, but I'm not making any progress on anything. So I put 3 of them to one side. I can handle 3. I was like, I can handle 3. So I did the 3, and then I moved on and I finished the other 3, and then I started another 3. And so 3 seems to be my magic number. So I agree with you, Melody. 3 is a good number to stick to. It's a manageable number of projects. Hugo's playing with his mouse under my desk. So I'm sorry if you can hear him rustling around. So yeah, I like to keep a variety of projects. I'll have a thinking project, I'll have an easy project, and I'll have like a car knitting project, or like an on-the-go project. So at the moment I've got the socks, which are pretty good on-the-go project. I've got the shawl, which is an easy, it's not mindless, but it's easy. You don't really have to stare at the pattern all the time to be able to follow it. And then I've got the thinking project, which is the cardigan, because whilst it's getting easier now that I've done a couple of repeats of the chart, you still have to think about it. And I think once they separate for the sleeves, it will start becoming a lot quicker. And I don't think I actually told you anything about the needles that I'm using on any of my projects. I'm so sorry. I know people have been asking for me to talk about the needles as well. So for my FO, I used 3.5mm needles for the main body and 3mm needles for the cuffs and all the finishing work, the ribbing. And that's what the pattern called for. My socks are being knit on 2.5mm Addy, I think they're Addy lace with the red cable. Magic loop, 2 at a time, toe up. It's the only way I've ever knit socks, and I think it's probably the only way I will ever knit socks. I do want to try knitting 2 at a time, toe up, on 2 magic loop cables at the same time, because I think that might be a little bit more conducive to knitting on the go, but I'm not entirely sure. Sorry. The shawl that I'm knitting for Maria, that's being knit on 3.75mm needles. These are my Knit Pro. These are the rainbow wooden ones. I don't know if you can see that at all. It's I really like these. I've got the interchangeable set, and I've picked up a few extra tips to fill in the gaps. I've got the starter set and the chunky set, so I've got a few extra needles to fill in the gaps of the ones for the sizes that I need. And for the Persistence is Key, that is being knit on my 4.5mm same needles, the Knit Pros or Knitter's Pride, I don't know which ones, what you call them. That's on the 4.5mm. Again, all the projects I'm knitting at the moment are being knit on the needles recommended by the pattern. Usually I don't have an issue getting gauge with the needles recommended. My knitting's not particularly tight or particularly loose, except my socks. I do seem to knit tighter on my socks. So anyway, okay, so moving on to what's coming up on my needles. I've got a test knit to start for Nina, of the Fuzzy Love Knots podcast. She's just finished designing a shawl, and so I offered to test knit for her, and I have my yarn all lined up here. I'm having a bit of a grey day today. So this is a nice light grey colour. It's called Grey Pearl, is the colourway, and this is my last 2 skeins of the Nurturing Fibres Super Twist sock wool that I got in South Africa last summer. Squishy, squishy. So I've got 2 balls of this. Each ball has 330 meters. The pattern calls for 500 yards, so that should be plenty. And I'll even have enough to swatch. Another thing I have coming up, not so much on the needles, but that I have test knitters working on, is for my cowl pattern that I'm releasing in a couple of weeks. So that's out with test knitters at the moment. It's going well. There's a thread on the Ravelry group if you want to check it out and see how people are doing and what yarn they've chosen. It's looking great. I'm really excited about that one as well. Sorry if you can hear Hugo. He's been very sort of needy this morning. Hey buddy. And the last thing I have coming up on the needles is quite an exciting one. I'm designing my own shawl, my very first shawl, and I haven't gotten very far. I've settled on a lace pattern and I've swatched for it. That's the swatch. I'm not going to open it up and show it to you, but you can get a little hint. And I'm going to be knitting the test, well, my test out of this Drops the Light. It's a slightly variegated sort of grey singles, and yeah, it's quite, doesn't feel particularly soft, but once it's been washed and blocked, it really softens up. And I'm actually doing this in conjunction with an independent dyer based in the UK called her shop name is the Yarn Tree, and it's Mel. And I got in touch with her actually because I was ordering some yarn from her. I got in touch with her to see if she would be interested in doing a collaboration. So she's going to be providing a custom dyed colorway for the shawl, and we've kind of spoken about what colours and how to do it, and I've come up with the design. So I'm going to do a test knit of the shawl myself. I'm going to knit it out first, sort of figure out the pattern and stuff, and then hopefully I will have that ready for test knitters. I'm hoping around the middle of May, and then I'm hoping to have the pattern released by the mid to end of June, and then we're going to be doing a knit along for the pattern, and then the prize is going to be the skein of yarn from the Yarn Tree that she's custom dyed specifically for this pattern, or for this knit along. And so it's gonna be like a summer shawl, so it's gonna be nice and lacy and airy. And sorry, I've got a cat crawling across my camera. Hugo, seriously, I've just told everyone that you are not a menace and that you are not a nightmare to deal with. You're just going to prove me wrong. Sorry about that. You guys wanted to see them, so here you go. What was I saying? Knit along, yes. So this will be the first knit along that I host and the first giveaway that I'm doing. And I'm hoping to get a few other prizes together for the giveaway. So at the moment I've got a ball of yarn. I'm probably going to knit up, I keep saying knit up, I'm probably going to sew up a project bag to go with it. And yeah, and if there's anyone who wants to donate prizes or wants to do a collaboration, or just in general wants to be involved in giveaways and stuff, just please send me a message, get in touch. I'm happy to discuss options and see what we can come up with. So that'll be exciting. That'll be coming up towards the end of June, I think, of this year. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That should be exciting. I'm actually quite excited by that. It'll be the first thing like that I do. Right, then moving on to acquisitions. I if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I went yarn hunting. I am so sorry. Hugo, come on, just get down off the table. Okay, you want this? Come on then. Sorry, I wanted his toy. Where was I? Yarn acquisitions, right, yes. I went yarn shopping this weekend with some of the ladies from the knitting group that I set up over here. And someone from the group who wasn't able to make it on Saturday had actually recommended this place that she'd found. Kind of sounded like a bit dodgy, I guess. She was like, oh, it's just down this little side street in the middle of, like, at the end of this road, and it's a bit sort of hidden away. And if the shop's closed, like if the shutters are down at the shop, you ring the doorbell for the house and someone will let you in and show you around. And I'm just like, okay. It sounds like a plot for a really bad movie. Like, you know, one of those really bad horror movies. I don't want to go on my own just in case. I'm going to take people with me. So there was a group of us that went. There was about 4 of us in total who went. And we walked in and there was a little old guy. He was a local, very, very sweet, and he let us in and he showed us around. And thankfully, one of the ladies who was with us, she spoke Arabic, so she was able. I mean, he could speak English, but his English was very broken, and we would have struggled to have gotten the most out of the trip without being able to speak Arabic. So it was good that we had her with us as well. So she was able to speak to him and translate for us and just help a little bit. And we went, the first room we walked into was quite small, and it was wall to wall, floor to ceiling, yarn everywhere, but it was all acrylic, the stuff that we were looking at in that first room, and I was a bit like, not really what I was hoping for. And then he took us into the next room, and that started to get a bit better, and then into the room after that, and then he had a secret room, which he took us into, which was like even better. Like, there was like 4 rooms, a floor to ceiling, wall to wall, just yarny goodness. Bear in mind, probably about 80% of that, 80-90% of it was acrylic. So whilst it all looked very pretty, it probably wasn't yarn that I would have touched anymore. But there were a few gems to be found amongst the acrylic as well. There was quite a bit of bamboo, cotton, there was some rayon. There were some other sort of blends and stuff which were interesting, and mostly from Turkey. There was some from Taiwan, and so yeah, that was interesting. It was an interesting experience, and it was quite like, wow, okay, I had no idea this was here. And it turns out this guy, his dad used to have a shop in the souks in Bahrain. He was quite famous for selling yarn there, apparently, back in the day. And now he now sells out of this little shop / his house at the end of Badai Highway, which happens to only be 5 minutes from where I live. I'm not sure if this is a good or bad thing. So yes, I did buy yarn, but no, I can't show you most of it. What I can show you is I picked up 1 ball just to try it out of this Elise Diva yarn, which is fingering weight. It's the same Elise brand as the bamboo that I picked up a couple weeks ago. And it's quite fine, it's a fine fingering. But this one is actually 100% acrylic, but it's like microfiber acrylic, so it's very soft. It's very soft. It almost feels like it almost feels a bit like the Knit Picks Comfy. It's not quite as soft as that, but it is very soft. So I wanted to try it out and see what it was like. And I like the colour green. So I was interested. It was cheap enough that I was willing to give it a go and just let's see what happens. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to make with it either, but it's a lot of yardage. The 100 gram balls has 350 meters in it, so it's definitely in the fingering category because it's very fine. It's finer than this nurturing fibers. Don't know if you can see that. Yeah. So I'm interested to see how that turns out. The reason why I can't show you the rest is I've actually been in touch with a few people, mainly podcasters, who are based in the UK and Europe, to see if they would be interested in doing a sock package with me. Because I'm going to be back in London in May. I figured if anyone would be interested, now would be a good time to do it, because it would save both sides a bit on postage. Because yeah, frankly, for me, it'd be much cheaper to post something to someone else in the UK from the UK, and for them to post it to me in the UK than it would be to do international shipping. And it'll be the same within Europe as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've a few people have got back to me who were interested in that. So I don't want to show the yarn on here, in case they want it to be a surprise. So I'm going to keep it as a surprise. We're still kind of like chatting back and forth. And this is what I mean. Like, it's been quite nice making these connections with people, and having these conversations back and forth, chatting on Ravelry and via email and stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And so if you are interested in doing a swap, or if you want to send me something or whatever, then just send me a message on Ravelry and we can sort something out. It'd be quite fun. I am thinking I would like to start doing a sort of scrappy blanket, I guess, at some point. Maybe not straight away, because I don't really have that much in terms of sock yarn scraps. The last couple of pairs of socks that I've knit until there was no yarn left, so no scraps. And I've only really been knitting with sock yarn or fingering yarn since September last year, so I haven't had much opportunity to build up scraps yet. But it's something I would like to do. So if anyone has like any leftovers that they don't want, they're not going to use, they want to get rid of it, let me know. I'd be interested in taking it off your hands. So get in touch via Ravelry, or you can send me a comment or something on the group page, on the episode thread, and just let me know if you're interested. Finally, the other thing I wanted to mention was a few podcasters have mentioned about ordering stuff and having international shipping being an issue and things like that. There's a website that I love to use called Love Knitting for yarn. They're a UK-based company. They also have a warehouse in the US, I believe, but they're very good. I've ordered a bunch of stuff from them actually, and it's currently waiting for me at my parents' house. But they stock all the big brands: Regia, Opal, Malabrigo, Manos, loads of them. And the reasonable prices, they have regular sort of sales and deals on for different ranges. And every now and again they have a free weekend where you get free shipping anywhere. In the UK you get free shipping if you spend over, I think it's £25, and in Europe you get free shipping if you spend over €50. Otherwise it's a flat rate fee. Even for me in Bahrain, the flat rate shipping is something like $11 no matter how much I order, so it's not bad. I haven't had anything shipped here before or sent here from Love Knitting or anywhere else, so I thought I'd give it a go because it's a free shipping weekend. I only ordered 2 balls of Regia to make a pair of socks for Perry, my husband. So I thought I'd just give it a go with a couple of balls. It's not too much of a financial commitment in case something goes wrong. And so yeah, I've ordered that. Their customer service team is amazing. Someone got in touch with me because there was an issue with the address that I'd put in, and I wasn't entirely sure how to input the address because obviously I'm having it sent to a PO box and not a house. So they were quite good at explaining how to do it, and a couple of emails back and forth, and cleared up the issue, and they told me how to input my address going forward to make sure that stuff actually gets sent out. So that should be getting sent out today. I'll let you know when it arrives, because I'm quite excited to see if this works or not, because if it does, then that will solve a lot of issues. And so that's it for acquisitions. Moving on to quite an exciting part of the podcast for me. Just move this stuff out of the way. Our project bags. So I mentioned last week that someone had gotten in touch with me about wanting to order a custom project bag because I make my own ones. I've made some for myself. I'm so sorry. Hugo. Seriously. Okay. Alright. Come here, buddy. Come here. Sit on my lap. Okay. See, this is what happens if I don't feed them in the morning. They start becoming a bit of a menace. It's usually Derek who's more of a menace, and he's kind of not around right now, so I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Project bags, right, yes. So there was someone who got in touch with me, a lady on Ravelry got in touch with me a couple of weeks ago about wanting to order a project bag for me. One of my, in one of the patchwork styles that I've done. So I finally put some time aside this week, and I made her this one. Here we go. See now. It's a large project bag. It's fully lined in bright pink, matches the handle. And this one it stands up on its own as well. Sorry, I don't have much space here to show, but it does stand up on its own. And so she's my first official customer, which is quite exciting. And so this will be winging its way to her in the States later this week. Hopefully either later today or tomorrow I'll make it to the post office. Then I also made a few other bags while I was at it. I have quite a stash of fabrics that I really like, so I was, and I do want to maybe start selling some on Etsy and see how that goes, if there is interest or not. But I'm also interested to know what kind of project bags you guys like. What features in a project bag do you like? What kind of lining do you like? How do you like it to stand up? Do you like it to stand up? Do you like it to be floppy? What sizes do you prefer? Things like that, because I'm curious. I've never sold project bags before, and I'm curious as to what are people's preferences, because I assume people's preferences are going to be different to my preferences. People like different things, so I'd like to know what you guys like in a project bag. So I'm going to start a thread on the Ravelry group about project bags, and I'll post a few questions at the start to get you guys going. And if you guys would like to take part in the conversation, let me know what you think or what you like in a project bag. What kind of fabrics you like, what kind of lining do you like it to be? A stiff bag? Do you like it to be a squishy bag? Do you like it to be padded? You know, what kind of thing would you like in a bag? So, because I've just experimented at the moment with the 4 bags that I have made, they're all slightly different in how I've constructed them. So they're, you know, some are a bit more floppy, some are a bit more stiff, some are padded, to see just to see how they turned out. And I like all of them. I think they've all turned out great. So the first one is this large purple grapes. It's got the spotty green fabric on the inside. And this is lined with a very stiff sort of interfacing, so it's not it does stand up on its own. It's empty at the moment and it's folded, so it won't stand up that great. But this one does stand up on its own, and it's quite a stiff interfacing. Then the next one has a very light interfacing on it, and this is a floppy bag. This will not stand up on its own unless it has stuff in it. But it's very easy to fold up. It'll be easy to scrunch up and put into a bag. So it's good for that sort of thing. Then the next one is a mix between the two. It's got the floppier interfacing, but it's a little bit stiffer. So this will stand up on its own a bit. But this is definitely nicer to feel. It's not as stiff as the first one. The first one is really quite stiff. And then finally, nipples, it's this one. And this one is padded. This is like this one. This one is complete. This one is padded as well. And this one stands up on its own nicely. I don't know if you can, oh well, you see that? It's lined in a nice dark green, same as the handle. And yeah, sorry, I have bad luck with zippers. There we go. And that's that one. And I really like the fabric in this one. I like the chevrons. I was a bit concerned about doing a directional print like this, especially something like a chevron, because if it's slightly off, it will be very skewy. Anyway, so that's the 4 that I've done so far, and I love all of them. I think they've all turned out much better than I'd expected. But I'm interested to know what you guys like in a project bag. What interests you? What would you like? What sizes would you like? These are all pretty big. These are all about, I think they're about 14 inches across by, I'm not entirely sure actually, I haven't measured them yet, but I'll put the information in the show notes about how big these are. But they are quite big. They'd definitely be considered a large size. But yeah, so I'm interested in that, and I've got fabric cut up for a few more. I just need to get some more interfacing because I overestimated how much I had versus what I actually had. And so yeah, I'd like to do a few more. I have a few other sort of sizes and stuff I want to try out as well and see how those turn out. But it looks like I'm going to be having quite a busy couple of weeks, so it might not happen until after I get back from the UK. I'm going to try and get the ones that I have already cut up and ready made, and have those at least listed on Etsy before I go, and just see how it goes. Really, I'm interested to know if there's any interest in these. So yeah, do send me a message or leave a comment and let me know. Right, so moving on to the next segment, which is in Bahrain this week. So I just want to quickly touch on a few things that people ask. They're interested to know a bit more about what life is like in Bahrain, and I've had quite a few questions on the group about, you know, what are the differences between living at home, where you were living at home back in the UK and in Bahrain. Are there any differences between Bahrain and Dubai and things like that? So a few things to note, and this is pretty much differences between what life was like in the UK versus in the Middle East in general. It's not specific to Bahrain or Dubai. Driving here is generally pretty mental compared to the Western world. People pay much less attention to the rules. There are rules, there are laws. People are just much more blasé about it. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen this week that I posted a couple of bits. One was a picture of 2 guys hanging off the back of a lorry whilst it was driving down the road. Yeah, that happens. Car safety and road safety, just, it's not the same as it is in the UK or anywhere else in the world that or in the Western world that I've experienced. So that's definitely something that we had to get used to when we first got here. And the other thing is the chocolate. Now I know Easter was a couple weeks ago now, but the last weekend rather. Chocolate is just one of those things that is just not as good out here. Even the same brands as we get back home. Perry is a lover of Cadbury's Dairy Milk. He loves Cadbury's Dairy Milk, and I like it too, but he is literally like obsessed with it. And I agree with him that the chocolate here does not taste the same. It's not the same chocolate as back home. It's not made in the UK, so it's made, I think they have a factory in Egypt or somewhere else where it's made. And the chocolate made for this region, you know it's made for this region because it's written in English and Arabic on the wrappers. They add something to the chocolates which increases the melting point so they don't melt as quickly, because it can get really hot here. And you don't want chocolates melting while it's sat on the shop shelves. So the stuff that they add to it just makes it taste not quite right. And it doesn't melt the same way in your mouth, obviously, because they've increased the melting point of the chocolate. So when it comes to Easter and Christmas and things like that, I find it really hard I mean, as a general rule, we try not to keep chocolate in the house. We try to eat healthy as much as possible. So we popped out to the local supermarket to get a couple of Easter eggs last weekend. And the thing is, when it comes to the Christian holidays, the chocolates are always imported. They don't make them locally. They don't make them in the Middle East for the Middle Eastern market. So they're always imported from the UK. So we get the good chocolate. And it's the same thing happened in Christmas when I was getting Perry some chocolates as part of his Christmas present. All the chocolates at the supermarket that were Christmas branded were all imported from the UK. So I knew we were getting the good stuff. You pay ridiculous money for it, but it's good chocolate. So for a treat every now and again, it's not the end of the world. And the last thing I wanted to mention, because it's something that's recently occurred to us this year. I mean, it happens every year, but it's only just happened to us in the last couple of days this time around, is we know when summer's on the way because the temperatures start to go up and your cold water starts to get hot. Our cold water here is never really cold. I mean, it's cold, but it's not ice cold. We were in Iceland in December and Perry turned the cold tap on and he was like, this is cold water, this is lovely, like, this is great. Over here you turn the cold water on and it's a little bit colder than room temperature at the best of times. But now I turn the cold water on and it's lukewarm, getting warmer. To the point where in the summertime you could probably turn your water heaters off because the tanks on the roof will already be hot anyway from the sun, so you don't actually need to heat your water anymore yourself. Yeah, that's always fun in the summertime when you turn on the cold water and the cold water's hotter than your hot water. Yeah, that's definitely a big difference between living in the Middle East versus living at home. You risk getting scolded by your cold water tap. So I think that's all I'm going to cover this week for what's going on in Bahrain, because that's kind of it really. We haven't really done that much this last week. It's been pretty quiet. I've just been focused on knitting and getting back to sewing and a few other things. Quickly, I wanted to mention a couple of podcasts that I've really been enjoying this last week. One is the Tilly Trout podcast. She's so sweet. I love watching her. It's just so much fun sitting down with my knitting and watching one of her episodes. Her personality is just so lovely and she really makes me laugh along with her. In her last episode there was a rather funny incident with a lemon curd. And the Celestarium shawl that she showed, that was just beautiful. We've quickly added that to my list of things I want to make. I've never knit with beads before. I've never used beads in my knitting, so it's definitely something I'd like to have a go at some point. So I've added that shawl to my list of things to do. And the second podcast I wanted to mention was Knix Knits. And I came across this one after I watched the Bakery Bears, and they mentioned they were doing the Spring into Socks cowl with Knix Knits podcast. So I went to check out his podcast. And he's a male knitter, and he's 14, and he lives in New Jersey, and he's so sweet, and I really love his personality. Again, it comes across so well on the camera. He's such a natural in front of the camera. Like when I was watching his first podcast, I didn't actually realise he was only 14. He definitely comes across much older in the way he talks, in his way of thinking, and I really like that. It was really fun to watch. It's really fun to watch his podcasts and hear about knitting from a male perspective, and B, from someone who's so young. And he's doing something that I think is amazing. He's set up a group, a club at his school, and he's teaching the other kids at his school how to knit, and hearing about how that's going and how he's progressing with that and how the kids are enjoying it and stuff, that's really great. And it was not anywhere near the same thing over here, but I mean, I'm teaching adults how to knit, and it's a completely different ball game altogether. And I've never really taught anyone to knit before, so it's a learning experience for me as well, trying to do that. But it's really interesting to see it from his perspective, and to hear what he has to say about knitting and what he knits. and stuff like that. So I've really been enjoying watching his podcasts and stuff like that. So those are the two I wanted to mention this week, and you'll find those linked in the show notes along with everything else that I've talked about. So upcoming, I mentioned earlier I'm going to be having quite a busy couple of weeks. I'm probably going to be back in Dubai again, not sure how soon, but probably sometime in the next couple of weeks, and then I'll be back in London at the end of the month, and next weekend is the Grand Prix in Bahrain, which we have tickets to, so things are going to be pretty busy around here. So my main focus is going to be getting the test knits done, the 2 shawls that I'm test knitting done, and the shawl that I'm designing knit up and the pattern written up. Those are my immediate goals. I want to finish the socks. It won't take me that much longer. I'll probably finish those today maybe, or tomorrow. But once the socks are done, I probably won't cast on another pair of socks until I go to London, because I've ordered so much yarn for socks that I think I'll just and I don't have any yarn for socks at the moment that's already wound up and ready to go. So yeah, so as usual, if you have any questions for me, please leave them on the Ravelry group or in the comments. I do try and get back to everyone's messages as quickly as possible. Sometimes it does take me a little bit longer, but I do eventually get back to everyone, so thank you for bearing with me if I take a while to get back to you. If you have any suggestions or comments or things you'd like to see on the podcast, just leave them on the Ravelry group. There's a thread for that. I love hearing from people. I love hearing from you guys who watch the podcast, so please do keep sending me messages and leaving comments on the group, because I love hearing from you. And so yeah, and if anyone does want to work together, do a collaboration, or want to donate prizes for giveaways and stuff, then do get in touch, because I'd love to work with you on that. And the only other question I have to put out there, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to go see a doctor about this, because I thought it was knitting related at first, but now I'm not so sure. It started happening probably about a week ago. My middle finger on my right hand, whilst I was knitting my socks, tip of my finger started going numb. And I thought it was just the way I was holding my needles, because I do knit tighter when I'm knitting socks, and I thought maybe I was just cutting off the circulation to my finger a little bit and it was going a bit numb. So I put the socks away, and I didn't work on them for a while. I actually put knitting away for the rest of that afternoon just to see if it got better. And it took a long time. It took a long time for the feeling to come back, and it started happening around 1 in the afternoon. I think it was by about 7 or 8 p.m. that the feeling had completely come back into my finger. Oh, that's just really weird. And it's been happening on and off since then. And now, but it's usually been after I've been knitting, so I've been thinking it's knitting related, but I'm not sure what's causing it. But then this morning I woke up and the tip of my finger's been slightly numb, and it's still a bit numb now, like it's not completely come back. But that was after I was sleeping, so it just feels a bit funny. And it's just that one finger, just this top section of this one finger. So I'm thinking, I'm not entirely sure what that's all about. I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced that. Is it knitting related, or is it something completely different? I'm thinking I should probably go see a doctor about it and get it checked out, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Leave me a message in the thread or in the comment section and let me know. Right, I think that's enough rambling for one day. I've got to go edit this now because there's a lot of things I need to cut out. Yeah, so sorry you didn't get to see Derek this time. Hopefully I will try and get him on camera next week, and have a good day. Enjoy knitting and have a good week. I will see you next week. Bye.